And so this session by Michael Jones is about how does the ideal business software behave? And I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
All right. So thank you all for coming. I've spent 6 months on this problem, and initially it all started with how does the ideal ERP software behave? But ERP isn't really a good example of what this actually is. It's more business software. So this is going to be different from a lot of the other talks here. It's going to be more academic, but I think that it really builds on what Moqui is, and kind of taking the data model up several layers of abstraction, and how how people behave. And the main thing that I want to get across here is that the main point of business software is to basically help, is to measure value, and we'll go into this, but that measuring value is what people and businesses do all the time. And so what the software needs to do is it needs to help people measure value. So the story starts out with thinking about how I can actually improve Moqui. And I started out with data. And data is interesting because there are so many different, data is like the fundamental thing that powers all of this stuff. Because we as humans are very good at making decisions and at prioritizing various different things, and there's some things that humans are better at, and there's some things that computers are better at. And computers are very much better at memory and remembering things, and handling things and having simple logic that is very fast. And so part of what I was doing here is I was trying to understand what actually makes a database work well. Like how does a database really scale? How can the most value be created through a database and through data and managing all of this and a given data model? And so one of the main things that I learned from this is that this is primarily answering the question about data at scale. And the primary problem of data at scale is consistency and availability. Consistency is basically there's one set of data, and for it to change, it needs to it basically it's a relational database, so it keeps the actual data consistent. Where if you primarily think about availability, then you sacrifice consistency for being available all the time. So this is what the hyperscalers use, like Google Cloud and AWS and all these different things. But the actual data that is in this software is very important as we write business software. Now, the next thing is basically a display. So what exactly, how is this data being displayed? And there's this great design book called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. And basically, the idea of a display, this is similar to, think of like a nuclear power plant. They will have a dashboard of all the different controls and all the dials and all of those things that actually represent the state of the system that may be a mile away. or maybe close by or whatever. But it's the original UI and UX is this whole design thing. And the primary thing that I got away from that is that the display of the software that we have needs to be an accurate representation of the internal system. That makes it so that there's a clear one-to-one mapping between the mental model that people have in their head and the the state of the actual system, so that people can be more efficient when they're actually using it. Now, in addition to this, there is a lot of different technologies that can be used to display things. There's lots of different platforms. There's mobile, there's desktop, there's command line. There's all these different ways that data can be displayed. And so I was basically thinking about, well, if you're actually creating an app that needs to be cross-platform, well, do you choose React Native? Do you choose Flutter? Do you use there's all these different cross-platform platforms to actually create your application on. And there's all sorts of architectural questions about whether you should use these. And I'm not going to answer these today, but the question about how to display data to an end user is really fundamental to the software that we work on. And another thing that I was kind of contending in this space is the actual logic that basically takes this data and may present it in a certain form, or so right now Moqui is written in kind of XML actions, but also Groovy and Java. And I was thinking, well, you want to get this onto a mobile device. Well, how do you do that? Well, the web browser is it's a fundamental, it's the most cross-platform that any technology has ever been, with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and also being able to connect to a server on the back end. But there's a lot of questions about which technology should actually be chosen for this. Is it better to use Flutter? Is it better to is React better than Vue? There's lots of decisions to be made here. And what I realized is that all of these decisions, they're fundamentally based off of certain traits that that the software needs to behave as. You may prioritize security over system performance. You may prioritize security over human performance. You may think that the longevity of the software is greater than greater than some of these other traits. And so there's a whole bunch of potential different things that could be chosen for a given solution. But how do you actually determine whether one of these solutions is the right one? So basically, I was thinking about all these different possible solutions, and I was getting a bit more into privacy. And I realized that if we how we actually prioritize these different traits matters as to the decisions that we make about the technology that we use and the decisions that we make every day. And how we actually determine the rank of these traits is, I think, similar to something that I discovered when I was looking at financial charts with my dad one time. So financial charts are very interesting because they're basically how we measure value. So if you take gold, if you take Bitcoin, if you take US dollars, and you actually and you think about what actually makes them valuable, over time. It's kind of this mysterious force that is similar to how we make financial decisions. And as I thought about this more, I came across this economist named Mises, and he was an Austrian economist, and kind of his conjecture was that the reason that the value of an asset will go up or down is predicated upon the actions that people take with that. So if a lot of people want to get into gold, then a lot of people will basically that'll make the price go up. If a lot of people want to get out of gold, then that'll make the price go down. And so one of the parts of how the economy operates is there are lots of decisions that people can make. People can decide to get coffee, they can decide to get tea, they can decide to get soda. But all of these objectives are, so all these are basically objectives or end results that we have. So in a business will also have an objective and key results. And so this same objective is where that's coming from. And so part of this is answering the question of how does a business actually use its resources efficiently? And I think that the primary, so this is basically the process of how economies work and how resources are used efficiently. And the most efficient way to use resources is first to have an objective that they're being put forward, that they're actually being used for, and having that objective be important for the business decisions that you're actually making. And so this prioritization is basically saying that what makes part of the decision process is that we have to choose one objective. We have to prioritize the list of objectives that we could potentially do to one objective that will actually use the resources effectively for the goal that we're working towards. So an example of this is a project management system, where in a project management system, we basically have a whole bunch of objectives, a whole bunch of potential things that we could do. And we assign a priority to them. It's usually a number, but this also happens in the decisions that we make every day and in all different parts of a business to actually determine whether the objective is worth, to determine what the objective is actually worth. And so as we, once we choose an objective, then we need to allocate resources to actually meet that objective. And this is part of the value estimation that we do when we choose an objective. Now, this is the cost of actually achieving that objective. And the cost of actually achieving an objective isn't just the financial cost, it's also the psychological cost of something. So the cost of the financial cost of Moqui is not very much, but the psychological cost of it can be great compared to eating some pizza. And So the value of the objective needs to be less than the actual value of the cost. And typically in financial accounting, we will measure this cost in money, because money is the best estimator that we have of value for most things. It doesn't measure psychological costs nearly as well, but it does measure general cost for a phone or for most things. It's the best universal estimator that we have of value. And so the last thing here is, what is the actual cost of the actual value of the cost. So this is us measuring value. The measure of the cost needs to be less than the actual end result that we are trying to reach. And the reason why it needs to be less is because if it's greater than, if the cost is greater than the potential end result, then we don't do it. Because if we do that, then basically it would be the same as not making a profit in a business. And the reason why this model still works, why basically companies don't make money often, is that the value estimation at the choice of decision is just an estimation. We don't actually know what the value of something is before we actually enact it out. And so the last part of this financial model, perhaps, or this economic model, is that we actually pay the cost of achieving the end result, so that we actually do. So if we're in a warehouse, then we use the forklift and the pallet and the product to actually deliver this and ship this to a customer, where the end result that a customer wants is a pallet of product. And so what we do is we spend the price, we pay the employee, we pay for the forklift, we pay for the warehouse, we pay for the cost of what it actually takes to achieve the end result. And then that action, that human action, over time will potentially result in what we actually expect. And so basically here, whenever we make a financial decision, we need to think about how we prioritize our goals, our objectives, into what is most valuable for us, for our business, or for our current objective. And we need to make sure that the cost is worth the actual objective. If we want to literally go to the moon, then the cost may be greater than the potential value that would result in that. Because if you want to go to the moon to eat a sandwich because you think it'd be cool, then the cost of it is almost certainly not worth it, if it is even possible. And so from an economics perspective, the actual value that we get from the actual way that value is measured is based off of the belief that a given resource will result in the objective that we require. And so one of the problems with this is that, how do you tell whether the belief of some individual person or an economy is worth it? Because this is all about measuring whether something is valuable or not. Is it valuable to hire one employee, or is it more valuable to hire one employee or three? Is it more valuable to use product A, or to use ingredient A or ingredient B in our in our product that we're actually selling. And so this problem with belief is basically, if we actually want to measure value, the world is way more complicated than we actually think it is, because as we measure the value of something, what does that actually mean? Well, every time we buy a product, that is a value assignment for that this financial cost for this banana is worth $1. And we are basically validating this assumption that the cost of this banana is less than the actual objective of eating a banana. And so as we basically go through this thought process, as I went through this thought process, I realized that economics doesn't really factor in everything about value, because what Mises believed is that economics is all about people and the actions and decisions that they make. And so I decided to go to a behavioral psychologist and professor named Jordan Peterson, and I basically went through through a course that he has online called Maps of Meaning. And throughout this course, I was able to more realize what people's beliefs and some of the missing parts of what value actually is in the economics field. And so the primary part of this is similar to the conjecture that I had at the end of studying economics, that the world is way too complicated to actually understand all of it. One of the initial reasons that AI was actually developed in the first place is so that we could have machines actually perceive the world. And so this idea of perception and actually understanding the complexity of the world is a really difficult problem to solve. And how people do it is they do it through an objective. They do it through a goal. There's a current state that we are in, and we have a certain need. We have a motivation. Are we hungry? Are we? Do we need to find fulfillment? Do we need emotional connection? Do we need social connection? Do we need any of these things? Do we need to be fulfilled? This is similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which may not actually be right. But we actually choose our objectives based off of the motivations and the things that our business or our person requires. And so this is what actually sets our objective and the prioritization for how we actually see the world. Because our perception system is similar to a neural network that actually needs to prioritize the world, and we don't actually see things based off of, because there's too much information out there, we don't actually see things based off of because we don't see everything. We see things based off of an objective. And so there's this experiment called the Invisible Gorilla experiment, called Dan Simon, and we're actually going to do this right now. Not entirely sure how this will work for those streaming, but let's give it a shot.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
jumpy with the video.
Okay. It is.
I'm looking at all three of our laptops sitting next to you. It's all frame jumping.
How many passes did you count?
6.
The correct answer is 15 passes.
There's a lot of
But
time.
did you see the gorilla?
Wait. Okay, but this is the whole point of it. So
This is
You
Did you
counted.
see the gorilla?
but there actually was.
But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research.
So halfway through it, we had an objective of counting how many passes they were, but because we had that objective, we didn't actually see the gorilla. And this experiment has been proven over and over again that we don't see the world based off of just everything. We have to see it based off of an objective so that we can narrow down the actual perceptions that we have to enough information that our brain can actually handle. I just found that fascinating.
This is a test of select.
It's playing again. So now that we've prioritized things, we need to categorize them into things that, so basically, as we prioritize things, part of the prioritization process is based off of whether something is a tool or whether it's an obstacle or whether it's something irrelevant that we can ignore. And this is tool in the broadest sense and obstacle in the broadest sense, where tools is, this is similar to the assets and liabilities, part of accounting. But accounting assumes the objective of profit, but this also applies to everything that we see and everything that we do. And I just found this fascinating because this is an inherent categorization. This is part of the data model of people, and how in people's logic and people's data model is to actually categorize things into tools, obstacles, and things that are irrelevant. And so a theory about why this is because, like, if you think about a caveman, to actually survive, you need to find tools that help you. You need to use a club to help you. You need to find food. You need to find all these different tools that will help you stay alive. And you need to avoid obstacles. This could be a predator. This could be a gator. This could be a snake. This could be all sorts of different things. And we don't necessarily know inherently whether something is a tool or an obstacle in the first place. And so we need to avoid everything that is irrelevant, because we are limited beings. We can't take in all the information, just like a computer can't take in all the information about the world or about a given set of data. Well, a computer can, we can't. but a computer can't understand it. And so as we categorize things into tools, obstacles, and things that are irrelevant, we build up a mental model of how the world works. So this is this is basically the physical data model of people that we are constantly changing all the time as we take in new information. And this model is built up from this model is built up from our previous experience. It is built up from our perceptions that are based on the goals that we actually have. And so basically, this is similar to the idea of training a classifier. So as we feed in more data, more labeled data, basically to the actual artificial intelligence, then we are more able to predict and classify what it actually is. And so this is fundamental to the economics discussion that we had before, where the actual decisions that we're making based off of prioritization and based off of the actual cost of something is based on the belief that we have about a given product or about a given thing. But in this scenario, like, we could say that it's a product. So what sales should do from a biological, from a psychological perspective, is sales is all about presenting the mental model of the product accurately, so that the customer can decide whether the product is fit within their beliefs and within their motivations about how they make decisions, or you could say their values. So values inside of a business is often something that you put up on the wall and you put up on your website and you say, these are our values. But that's not really how values work from really deeper perspective. The values of a business are integral to every single decision and every single action that a company makes. And these values are built upon the previous knowledge of the business or of other people inside of it. And this is fundamentally how we actually see a certain product. Is do we believe that Moqui will fit? Do I believe that Moqui will fit my perceptions? Do I believe that this product will? Do I believe that Coca-Cola will make me satisfied? Do I believe that Apple really does make a computer that will solve my computing needs? So this thought was based off of Vinogradova and Sokolov, which is based on the work by Alexander Luria, who is one of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century. And the interesting part is that this thought is actually so Alexander Luria actually influenced Norbert Wiener, who was the initial person who came up with cybernetic theory, which was crucial to how AIs actually work, to how neural networks work, and this idea of having an objective and evaluating that objective is based off of the things that actually get, like, the reward function of an AI program is basically evaluating the objective and telling whether something is a tool or whether something is an obstacle that gets in our way. And the interesting, yeah. So we have a certain mental model of the world, and we're constantly taking in new information. But the world is really complicated, and we can never actually have a complete mental model of what the world actually is. And so an inherent part of these systems is that they need to handle these systems that like business automation software, or this whole this whole business software and person domain is that we need to handle unpredicted things. This is an error. This is an error in the mental model that we have, and we need to understand, and we need to come up with a way to fix it. But what's crazy is that this is about this comparison between the mental model that we have and the new information, and the comparison between the new information that we're getting is actually what regulates emotion. Emotion actually comes from the prediction system that we have, the mental model that we have of the world. And as we basically take this and compare it to this new model that we have, that is where this thing called affect comes from. And because if you think about it, like you break up with your significant other, the mental model that you had of your significant other, of your life, has changed. And so you may get very upset. There's a threat. There is anxiety about not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And so the emotions that we have are the feedback. They're the feedback about the state of the world, the actual the state of the world, and whether the state of the world is what we think it is. So that's, I don't know. So that's actually based off of some thought by Lisa Feldman Barrett, who wrote the book How Emotions Are Made. And so this is why people say go with your gut. Because your gut is basically the thing that we say about when we think about our emotions. Our subconscious basically knows what takes in all this information and tells whether the mental model that is coming in is different from the one that we have. And so basically, often the best decisions that are made are based off of, like, we may not be able to rationally explain why we're making a decision, but the actual emotion that we get when we're thinking about the decision, whether it's something that we should do or something that we shouldn't, is the best approximation for making a decision. And so this is why emotions are critical to actually decision making in a business. That it is our best understanding of the situation. And so let's kind of put this whole thing together. We have a place where we're trying to go. This is our vision. This is the objective that we're trying to reach. And we have a place that we are in our business, and we have a place where we would like to be. So we plan what the actions and steps that need to be taken to actually get to that point. And we do that based off of our values, based off of our beliefs of what will get us from point A to point B. And as we set this objective, as we set this point, as we define it clearly in our business, then we actually see the tools and the obstacles that will get us in the way. And so this is why we need to define clear goals instead of vague ones, is because the more clear a goal is, the more likely we are to see the things that will help us to get there, and the things that will get in the way. And then as we continue to continue to progress towards this goal, we are continuously checking to see whether we are making progress to that goal, and that is where the positive emotion or the pleasant emotion comes from. And when our mental model of the world isn't completely there, then that is when we get negative emotion. And then as we continue to go across the path of actually getting to this place where we would like to be, whenever we see a tool, we continue there. We use the tool to be better able to get to our objective, or we see an obstacle and we either go around it, or we overcome it, or that kind of thing. And so this whole process is the fundamental data model of the actions that people take, and also that businesses take. And as we continue on our way down this path, this is basically the simplest. If I can explain this to you in 45 minutes, and that is very simple, and it is the simplest, most effective way that we can operate, that people can operate, but also that our business software could operate if we kind of incorporated this into how we do things, into how our business operates and the software that is being used in it. And so so in every step of this process, as we prioritize our objectives, as we tell whether the cost of a decision is worth it, as we predict the cost of a given objective, as we plan certain things, these are all based off of our beliefs and our values that we have in the way that we see the world. And this is why measuring value, and this is all part of what measuring value is, so that we can actually make a decision that will create the most benefit, that will use resources effectively, that will help businesses actually achieve their vision. And so what does the ideal business software actually behave? Well, what it does day in and day out is it measures value, so that people can make decisions in their business, in their life, and what they're actually doing that are worth it, so that you can see the tools, and you can see the things that will help you avoid or overcome the things that don't, and show you that you're on the right path. And so, yeah, that is my talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a bit depressing to know that you have to put in all the effort before you can do the measurements, if you're successful or not. But coming to think of it, that's really how businesses work. Like, all you can do is forecast beforehand.
Right.
And then
See how it goes.
you launch and you discover if your forecast was right or not.
Right.
Test in production.
Yeah, measuring value in economic terms has always been problematic. I mean, accounting's been working on it for 400 years now, and we have a lot of methodologies, but I'm not sure we're closer to measuring actual value. And of course, one of the big reactions that we have right now is that for the last 50 years, there's been this trend of thinking that businesses are only about creating economic value, and the whole B corporation, social social entrepreneurship, all of that kind of stuff is built around the idea that economics doesn't cover all of the values that need to be covered. It's an interesting area, but I'm having a hard time seeing how, in a practical way, we can change the software to be more effective along the lines you've described, particularly if you're measuring emotions and psychological parameters that are notoriously difficult to measure in any real comparative sense.
Well, to your point, Matt, the idea of economic value, it's kind of the proxy we use for actual value, and unfortunately, too many people get confused that it is a representation of what people actually value.
Yeah.
And even in business where there's responsibility and accountability involved, so that you have to manage economic value, there are still plenty of other values to consider. And I suppose even emotion plays in there, where if we over focus on economic value, we lose sight of other things and feel that as we go. And then eventually that causes problems for economic value in a lot of businesses. But it's an interesting question, like measuring other things. There are other things that can be measured in the system, aside from pure economic things, time and results of certain things. If we, I guess it's easier with something like manufacturing physical goods. With something like a task where you don't know how long it's going to take, especially most creative tasks are like that. It's a bit harder to measure it numerically, but yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, Matt, you're exactly right that measuring value isn't simple at all. I spent, like, a lot of time thinking about what exactly measuring value is, and you're right, it's not obvious exactly how to apply this in software, but this is the method that people measure value, and it's the closest thing that I've found to actually measuring, or to actually figuring out how to make decisions. If there's one way that if there's one if statement that determines that determines all the decisions that you make in your business and everything that you do, it's value. And so,
yeah, does it add value? Can you define it, even if you can't reduce it to a number? Like it can still guide decision making, at least.
Yeah.
That's kind of assuming that there's an objective value, and I'm not sure that's entirely true.
So, okay, the objective value versus
subjective, is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
So it doesn't really apply here. So like, if this is objective and this is subjective, this is a whole different plane of existence. And the reason why is because this kind of value isn't subjective, it isn't objective, because it's too complicated to be objective, and it's too rigorous to be subjective. So what it is it's pragmatic. That like this is the whole point of this, is that we don't have a complete mental model that we can tell whether something is valuable or not. And so us predicting the value of something is it's not subjective and it's not objective. It's pragmatic, because it enables us to operate in a world that is way too complicated for its own good, and us being limited creatures.
So I guess then that gets to the point of defining things like goals or a vision for a project or an organization or whatever, and using that. Yeah, is that kind of what you're getting at? And whether it's subjective or objective, it's those are kind of funny terms. And in my opinion, there are anyone who thinks something who is purely objective is probably not sufficiently humble to realize that they are the subject that's making that assessment. So, so value, in my opinion, is purely subjective, and assertions of objectivity are usually overblown.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, as they say, it's differences of opinion that make horse races, right?
right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks
Yeah,
for your
interesting.
comments, and thanks for listening to that. I know that it was a bit of mental work there.
A lot of different thoughts to pull together. Well, thank you, Michael. Yeah, that's
And that was the simple version.
that's the simple version. Okay, well, I'll stop the recording now, and then